Welcome back to Beyond the Book. We love to spotlight the heart behind stories and the authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, JoAnn Dickinson, and today I'm thrilled to introduce you to someone whose work blends emotional depth with heartfelt storytelling. Author, mental health advocate, and intuitive writer Lindsay Pope. Lindsay is the author of Sheldon's Time, Stella's Dream, and Sully's Strength. Plus, she has a new release. These are three beautifully crafted children's books that don't just entertain, they offer comfort, insight, and a gentle reminder that it's okay to feel deeply and take up space in your own unique. She's also the author of ABCs and HDG. Beyond her books, Lindsay leads powerful workshops titled Writing to Heal, where she guides others in using writing as a tool for emotional well being. She's also a proud mother and a believer in the healing power of both solitude and self expression. Her journey into writing, particularly during a time of recovery from depression and anxiety, is both inspiring and incredibly relatable. Today, we'll talk about how her stories came to life, how writing became her signature style, and why honoring her inner child was one of the most courageous steps in her author journey. Welcome, Lindsay. I'm so excited to meet you personally. We're friends on social media. That was a huge opening, a lot of information in there, so I can't wait to get right into it. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for having me. And I've been, as you know, a huge fan of Riley for years and this your wonderful books. And it's just great to talk with you. And so thank you for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. Share with us about your books because I know you have a new one. I really want to know about the anxiety and the healing and how that all related to your books.
Absolutely. So I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety. I believe I was officially diagnosed for the first time when I was in my younger 20s. And at that time, it was just something that I noticed that I was experiencing a lot of anxiety, overthinking things. I was doubting myself constantly. I was also experiencing pretty frequent panic attacks at that moment. And it was a kind of an interesting place to be because my exterior was not like that. So for instance, I was a tour guide on my campus at college. So people never assumed that I had anxiety because typically you don't associate anxiety with being able to speak in front of a group. So it was just kind of an interesting mix of things to experience. Right before I really started to actually fully dedicate myself to writing, I was just going through a really hard time where my anxiety was sort of overrunning my life. And it, for me, turned into that depression because it was like I started to more and more isolate myself. And it started to become more of a scary, how am I ever going to get out of this situation? And fortunately, I was able to get myself help. And I did a whole myriad of things to help myself. And a huge part of that journey for me was writing and dedicating that time and space to write. So as I just was letting it flow and write these things out, I happened to write my first children's book, which was Sheldon's Time. But of course, I didn't have a name for it yet. It was just a little poem about a little crab. And that's all I knew. And I really loved the story. So then I thought, well, I think I want this to be a book. And actually making it through that really hard time gave me the strength and courage I needed to finally say to myself, you deserve to publish this book because this is important to you and you really want to do this. So it did take me a few years because I struggled with anxiety and the imposter syndrome, but eventually I was able to get it out and he'll actually be celebrating actually right now, he's celebrating his third book birthday. August 8th is his 2022. So he's 3 now. So it's been very rewarding to have him out in the world for 3 years.
I love that, Lindsay. I love the illustrations. They are so beautiful, and we'll get into that. Share with us a little bit about your workshops. I think that is so interesting. Writing just heals the soul. I know when I was writing book after book, I think that was part of healing the soul.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, as I was kind of healing from that period where my anxiety was very severe and I also was experiencing depression, part of my healing was I actually had a spiritual director that I was working with. In addition
Oh,
to a therapist, I also had a psychiatrist. So, I had a whole team,
oh,
which I think is a great approach. I'm very, very fortunate. And so, my spiritual director actually said to me, "Why don't you write about, why don't you?" And I'm like, "Oh, right. Okay." That seems like a natural thing. And so there's a specific method that I was doing, which is that you write to the source that you believe unconditionally loves you. So for me, that is my higher power. So I was actually writing, and then you respond to yourself back as though that person or thing or entity is responding to you. And so
interesting.
as I was doing this, it was immensely powerful. It was so amazing to me the things that I was writing back because typically prior to that, my inner voice was very, very critical and it was very negative. And so for the first time, I'm writing all these positive, inspiring things about myself. And I didn't even know that I had it in me to write that about myself. So it was just such
Wow.
a huge shift. And I found it so profound. And professionally, I've been working in the training field for over 14 years now. So I
Mm.
just thought between the two, let me take this experience and then take my knowledge of training and train people how to do this because for me it was a life changer. So I feel
Mm.
like if I can help anybody else, that's a huge win.
That is so interesting how that heals writing. I guess maybe because it's you talking to yourself, it's that inner feeling of giving that positive affirmation. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Because before that, I had no clue that that was even something that was inside of me. I was living in a very negative inner critic world. There was nothing positive happening inside of my brain in relation to myself. So doing that practice sort of drew it out and made me realize that, oh, actually, I do have this in me. And I just didn't know it. It was like it was being covered by all this negativity that I was experiencing. So in doing that practice, it allowed me the space and the time to actually see and actually experience, oh, wait a minute, there are positive things. And to actually believe it too. That's a whole nother thing is believing it. Because sometimes if you're in the space I was in, I could hear something nice from someone else and it just bounced right off. It didn't really resonate. And by me actually writing it to myself, it really helped it to resonate, which was much more impactful for me.
Even when I started writing, Lindsay, I was nervous to put those books out. I don't
Yes.
know about you. You're opening up, here's my talent. What do you think? And people are very critical. They can be, and you need that feedback, but it's very scary. Are they really good? Are people going to like them? Is it a good subject? I just started writing about my grandkids because I just felt like that was a subject that I knew a lot of, and that's what I'm learning with this podcast is a lot of people write what they know, what's close to them and an experience that they've gone through. So we as authors, we're stepping out and showing who we are to the deepest depth
Absolutely.
and I think that's scary in itself because are they going to my podcast? I feel like, oh my gosh, is anybody going to like it? Are they going to, whatever. I learned a lot from my husband. We've been married almost 40 years. And it's great when you have that partner that is truly the support and keeps, instilling in that of your doubt. I can't tell you how many times over the years I was taking a final state board exam as a dental assistant. And I was studying one night and I told my husband, I'm not smart enough. I'll never pass this. And he goes, you can do it. You can do it. And that's when you need that cheerleader or anybody in your life. It doesn't need to be a husband, whether it's a child, whether it's family members. Sometimes people just don't have that other person that is as supportive or what you may need. You know, that's why I was so interested in hearing more about the mental health and how that heals as a writer. Your book, Sheldon's Time, explores the concept of needing alone time, something that's often misunderstood in children. Can you share what inspired Sheldon's story and how it connects with your journey?
Absolutely. I wrote Sheldon was the first children's book or concept I wrote that I wanted to be a children's book. And at the time, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. So I joined the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators because I didn't know what else to do. And they came up. And so that's where I learned it. So he came through and he just told me his story. That's how, and I just sat there and I wrote it. I'm a hand writer, so I write with pen and paper. And so I sat there and I wrote it and I looked at it. I was like, that's kind of interesting. And then the second thought I had was, I don't think that I've seen another children's book like this. So typically, if you're seeing an introverted character, they're often cast as a grumpy, or that for some reason they don't want that interaction. And it was really important to me to keep him as the introvert that he is, but also show that he's not grumpy. He's happy, he's well balanced, and he actually does have very good friends. It was just that particular day in the story, he needs his space. And it felt very important to me to advocate for that. And I didn't realize at the time, but I realized it actually a few years later, I would say closer to when the book actually came out, that it was really my inner child coming out and advocating for myself, because as a kid, I needed space. And sometimes grown-ups just don't understand that. They sort of want to push you and say, you should go play with other kids and you should do that and you should do that. And it was hard for me as a kid to speak up for myself because I didn't even know what it was, right? I just was like, I don't want to. So it wasn't like I could sit there and say, well, I need some alone time. Like I wasn't there yet. So I kind of realized that, actually, yeah, this is sort of my inner child coming out and sort of advocating for kids like me and kids that may need alone time. And one of the most beautiful, I guess there's been so many beautiful things since bringing him out into the world, but two of my favorite things have been one that I've had some adults tell me, I wish this book was around when I was a kid. That is something incredibly sweet to hear. And the other thing, I've also had some people tell me, this is a great book for kids with autism. And yeah, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to hear that." At any time that you can create a resource for anybody, that's a wonderful thing. Absolutely. I love that. So hopefully, anybody it helps, just, makes my heart smile.
You should use that, Lindsay. I just had an idea pop in my head. You should use that as social media. Great book for autistic kids or certain types of kids. And then in the description, explain why. And you have some great knowledge and information and resources that I think could help. And then hashtag autistic. And I think just the connection of that would be great to put that out and share that, why it would be good for that type of kids. I was the same way when I was a kid. I could sit in my room. I wasn't much of a reader. We didn't have children's books in my home growing up. Years ago, I wasn't a good reader. My alone time, I could be in my office writing, doing whatever, posting whatever work that I'm doing for the day. I love just that introvert alone time. And
Yes.
I don't know if that's just me and who I am. I'm very careful with it though, because I could get lost in my own head, is what I call it. And then, you've got to get up and move and do different things, go outside, take a walk, exercise. But it is easy to get lost in your own head, is what I call it.
It absolutely is. Yes.
You've shared that Sheldon's Time was the first book you wrote during your recovery from depression and anxiety. What role did writing play in your healing process, and how did it feel to publish that story after so much inner work?
Writing was a huge part of my journey. So it's actually at the time, I currently live in Havre de Grace. I didn't live in Havre de Grace yet, but I was driving up here to write because we have beautiful water
Is it your city? Where you said
in Maryland.
Maryland?
So I was driving here to write because we have beautiful water, and I found that writing by the water was just a really beautiful. And it was also really cool what was happening because I was sitting there journaling all these ideas, and people would randomly would strike up a conversation with me, which I thought was interesting because people don't always do that now. People naturally, we're not as prone to approach strangers as we once were. And so these people would ask me questions. They're like, "Oh, what are you writing?" And I'd be like, so actually these people outside of like my very immediate circle were the first people that I said, I want to do a book. And they were also the first people to say, really, and kind of get excited about it. And so that was really helpful for me to help build my confidence. And it was like just these random people that were just being nice. It was so awesome. So it was such a huge part of my journey. The writing portion of it was just essential. I'm convinced that I would not have come as far as I have on my healing journey had I not been writing. And when I was finally able to get Sheldon out, of course, like you said, it's absolutely terrifying. It's also like this huge adrenaline rush. And I would say I felt terrified. It was like a mix of terrified slash adrenaline. And ultimately, I felt really proud that I kept his story the way that I wanted to keep it. And now that he's celebrating his third book birthday, that has not changed. I'm still just so proud of his story and I'm so proud of what it is. And so that's something for me. It's like one of my top things in my life that I'm glad that I did. It kind of comes like right after having my daughter. It's like I put my book baby in the world. It's just become one of the best things I've ever done.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I was working a full-time job when I started writing, and I thought it was just a hobby. And it is not only that adrenaline and being nervous, but I feel like it's such an accomplishment. It's like something that you never imagined. I wrote, I think about 15 books I'm on, including the 2 activity books in just 3.5 years. I took a couple of first 2 years. I really put out a lot of books, and not because of the adrenaline, but some of it was stories that I already had written. During COVID, I feel like everybody was looking for a hobby.
Yes, absolutely.
But it is just so rewarding. It's that saying my husband says sometimes, a starving artist. You don't make a lot of money. And I was editing another video yesterday that a gal that I interviewed, an author, she said, it's not about the money. It's just what it does for your heart, what it does for others, and giving back. You can't count your hours. You can't really be that concerned about how much money did I make? Although I do have a business, so I'm always mindful of how much money am I putting out? What am I going to get back? Everybody has a budget in mind, but it's just that's not why we do it. We do it because of the passion. We do it for the kids. I love going to school visits. I don't know if you go to visits and events. They are my favorite. They feed that doubt of ours and they get so excited. Share a little bit if you've gone to events, Lindsay.
Absolutely. I've done some wonderful events and also school visits. I couldn't agree with you more. They are so much fun to just have that big room of kids in there, and the energy that you feel is just electric. And I also love when I always make sure to leave time so that they can ask me questions because they ask the best questions. And sometimes they ask you really funny questions like, how old are you? Or like and I'll be honest, any question, I'm like, sure, it doesn't bother me. But, they very often ask really wonderful questions about your book or your characters, and they're just so curious. And I also feel like, the chance to actually meet us in person and see us and actually say, well, maybe one day that could be me. So I always tell myself that would be the most rewarding thing if anybody ever down the line came back to me and said, well, I saw you at a school visit and now I'm an author and here's my book. Just to see that full circle moment come through would be so thrilling.
Isn't it though? I do the same, Lindsay. At the end, I try to leave 15 minutes isn't enough. I always say I could do it for an hour taking questions. And as the teachers are taking them out in lines, leaving the event, I stand in the lines because the kids want to continue asking questions. So I answer their questions as they're being led out the door because you never get to all of them. When you take that first question, there's 50 hands that are going up out of maybe 100, 200 kids. And you feel so bad that you didn't answer that one. Or, I feel like that was me when holding up my hand and I wanted to ask a question, but yet you weren't picked on because not enough time. I feel like we learn from them. They'll say, why don't you write about this? Or you should write about that. Or that's how I wrote Secrets of Hawthorne Manor. I did school events and I must have had 3, 4 different events. They asked me when I was going to write a chapter book. And so third, fourth, fifth grade,
Absolutely agree. Yes. And these kids want to read. The whole notion about technology and we're not reading. I have not personally found that to be true at all. I find that kids are excited about reading. They love books. They get excited about picking up a book and looking at a book. And so I have not seen that change personally. I think I just see a lot of excitement, which has been great.
I agree with you. It's like us with hobbies. If you like to play tennis or you like to go for a walk, you have different likes. And kids like to play video games, but they also like to read books and they like story time and they like to ask questions and they're so inquisitive. My grandkids, my daughter limits them on their phone or video time or games, and they like to read. Our granddaughter reads much higher grade level than what she is.
Yes, absolutely. And also, one thing I'll do when I go to story times is I will put all my covers out. I'll put all the books out and I say, you tell me, what story do you want to hear? I don't want to assume, right, that you want to hear a certain story. So you tell me. And it's so interesting to watch the kids pick what they want to hear. And I think that just gets them more involved. It gives them a little bit more of, freedom of choice. And
Well, that's a great idea.
yeah, and it's also kind of a cool test as an author because you can sort of just test out your covers, right? Because if they keep picking the same book, but they never go to the other books, then you might have to say to yourself, oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to, change something on my other covers. Maybe there's something that's not as appealing to kids as there is on this one.
How do you choose if you've got a group of kids and they're split between 2 different books? How do you make that decision of which book to choose from?
I actually had that happen yesterday in an event. And so I put 2 books behind my back and I was like, right or left? And then the first thing I heard was the book that they got.
That's a great idea because I have done that. I've asked them, what is your favorite cover? Which one do you like? And it's all over the board. Some gravitate to the simple, I'm going to call them more simple, like John's Camping. And then some gravitate to Lou's Zoo because they're such beautiful illustrations.
Yes.
And then the Narwhal book, Amelia Ophelia series, it's all over the board. I think because I have such different book covers, but I wanted to hear how you did that because I love the idea of asking them, which one would you like me to read? That's a great tip. You described your writing as intuitive writing and even create custom poems and stories as gifts. Can you tell us more about what intuitive writing means to you and how it shapes your creative process? I thought this was a very interesting term, so I'm excited to hear about that.
Thank you. That's one of the favorite things I do is writing for specific people. So my daughter is the easiest person for me to write for. And so recently I wrote her a book about her turning 5. And it was very specific to her personality. So the whole book is all of her interests basically blended into the book. And I do not have the beautiful artistic skills that my illustrators do. So I just use her real pictures in the book. And then I have it created online. And I have also had the opportunity to create books and poems for other people. And today I like to do this for people that are going through something difficult, just as a little pick me up. So I've done one for a woman who was a breast cancer survivor. I've done one for a child who has type 1 diabetes. There's another child who has cerebral palsy and he was going through a pretty significant surgery. So I wrote him a specific book. And what I do when I write this type of book is I really have to just sit and breathe and I have to think about that specific person and sort of just tune into what I believe they would want to hear. So it's kind of an interesting process, and then whatever comes out and then I'm able to deliver it. And my intention is always that it's something positive and healing and something that will help encourage or inspire them and just help them feel really special about them.
Oh, that is so special. I love that you write poems and books for people. And with Canva, you really could make a little mini book of your own, or even just a one-page poem with a beautiful background. But that is really special, Lindsay. I bet you're very blessed with different people that you have touched their lives.
Thank you. Yes, that's always my intention to do that.
Many authors struggle with imposter syndrome, another buzzword or phrase, especially when self publishing. What helped you finally take the leap and bring your children's books and your voice to the world?
I'm trying to think. That one kind of has an interesting inspiration story because normally my characters talk to me, but with that one, that was inspired by a tea towel.
Share with us about the imposter syndrome.
So that was something that I was struggling with for a long time. And I was always writing ever since I was little and just coming up with these different story ideas and poems and everything. And for a very long time, I was keeping it fully to myself. I mean, it was like I would go write by myself somewhere and I would hide from my journals because the idea of anybody ever seeing them was just terrifying for me. And it was really interesting because I did have this secret dream of wanting to have books out. So it was like a weird complex to deal with both of those things at once. I think when I decided to get more serious and really bring Sheldon out into the world, I had to face it head on. There was no escaping it. And for me, reading Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert was a huge help because she talks about the fact that the fear can be there. You just invite it. It's going to be a passenger, but it's going to be in the back seat. It's not going to be driving the car. And
Oh, I love that.
yes. So it's like if you wait, and I tell people this all the time now because it worked so well for me. If you wait until you feel like you're ready, then that day may never come. So it's all about like pushing that to the back seat, right? And not feeling fully ready, but then still kind of just pushing through it and doing it anyway. And then once you do it, for me, it became so much easier to then do every other book. Once I got that first one out, it was like, oh, it was this huge relief. And then it was so much easier to do the other two in that series and then my Habit Grace book as well. Because it was like I already went through the hard stuff. I already got through it. So it's just easier.
I've never heard that about putting it in the back seat and pushing forward, but that is so true. It's self-doubt. A lot of it is self-doubt that, oh, I don't know if I can do this. You put that behind you and just push through whatever your task is. And there's a lot of things I don't like to do on a daily basis, but you have to do them and push through it. And I think it's a great lesson to learn in your everyday life, but also as an author and writing. Um, I love that. Your books are full of emotional honesty and beautifully woven life lessons. How do you decide which messages or themes to explore in your children's books? Do they come from personal experiences or conversations you've had with others? I think you've shared that a little bit, but maybe go into the emotional honesty. And that again goes back to the mental health, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, really, it starts with my characters telling me what their story.
Oh, I love that. And the reason why I'm going to interrupt you for a moment, because one of the questions that I've asked several people, does the manuscript come first or the characters. And I have this character in the back of my head, and I've always had the manuscript come first. Share with us, Lindsay.
And that's really interesting. Now I want to know more about that character.
I'll share with you, but I want to hear your story about why you do that. Or is that just the way you write? I think that sometimes that's just the way we write.
Yeah, for me, it's really just it was so funny. So I wrote Sheldon's book. So he pretty much came right out and told me I knew right away that he was a crab. I knew right away basically the premise of his story, which was that he wanted to spend the day by himself. But I also knew that he was not this grumpy character that was trying to shut out the world. It was more about like, hey, I just need some alone time. And it was interesting because in the story, I incorporated his friends. Like I knew that he had two friends, and I sort of thought through what types of animals would they be, and I landed on the sea star and the seagull. And then after I write his story, it was honestly a surprise. I didn't know that they were going to want their own stories. And then it was so funny because very similar to him, they just sort of came through, and the sea star came through to me more as an extrovert. And so her story is more about that and what she's experiencing. And then the seagull, he's going to be struggling with some issues that he has about his appearance. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting because I think, of course, growing up female, we're very familiar with females struggling with the body appearance issues, but you don't see that as often for males. But I personally believe that it would go either way, that boys could potentially struggle with this. And I
Mhm.
thought, it may be important to have this character out in the world that's a male character that's struggling with this body image issue, just in case there's any other boys out there that read the book and can relate and hopefully find some comfort in the fact that they're not alone in struggling with that.
I love that you combine the male and female stories in the animals. It is a struggle sometimes to me. Should it be a boy? Should it be a girl? Recently, I feel like maybe I have too many girl books. And when I say girl books, a story about a little girl or a story about a little boy, because at the farmers markets, the parents or the grandparents will tell me, oh, it's for a little boy. What book do you have for a little boy? I ask for the subject, not the male or female characters. And many times when I ask them that question, they like space. And right away I'll say, "Oh, Riley, this is a great book." And they'll say, "Oh, but it's a little girl." And I said, "But that's okay. Boys like to read about little girls." And that's what I love about your books is I feel it's a very general story that even though we have people in the world that only want to buy stories with little boys or little girls for little boys and little girls. I think that's sad that they are limiting their children. It should be about the subject. And I actually share that with some of the grandparents. It's okay that you're buying a book for a little boy. They want to read about little girls as well, but it really is about the subject matter and the storyline. But I'm struggling with the boy versus the girl. I want to do something that combines all of it, which my Lose Zoo books do. There's a lot of decisions. I'm sure you can contest to this, Lindsay. There's a lot of decisions that go into why we write the story that we write. Is there any books that you struggled with that you weren't sure what to write about or what characters?
I would say for sure, Sully was the most challenging for me out of the three. His story, I kept changing and playing with different ideas at one point. And I think too, because like you said, you get feedback all the time. And one of the questions that I got pretty frequently was, are you ever going to do a Christmas book? And so I even toyed with him as a Christmas book. So I have so many different versions of his manuscript and so many different things that I was playing with. And it was challenging for me to really figure out, so it's like I had Sheldon, I had Stella, I had the very basic concept. Like I knew his character very well, but I just wasn't sure what he wanted his story to be. It wasn't coming through as clearly to me as the other two. So it did take me a little bit longer to get his out. Like it was kind of like I got Sheldon, then a year later I had Stella. Actually, less than a year later I had Stella. And then there was like a pause. and then finally Stella came out. So I'm glad that I gave him the time that he needed to figure out, and that I got to play with a bunch of different ideas too, because I think that as an author really helps you learn and grow. So it was definitely a worthwhile experience.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I have all these ideas in my head. I tend to have 5 or 6 projects going on at one time. And I think that's part of the decision making of I can't decide what to do. And
Yes.
I actually had this conversation with my grandson and granddaughter of characters and what's more interesting or a story about. And it's so hard when you have several books about different subjects because I don't want to just write about this and that. You want to really make it a meaningful story and what somebody really could potentially be going through that that book is going to speak to. And so it's hard. And with our books in the children's book world, it's flooded right now. I'll get an idea of a pizza eating dragon. And before you know it, somebody's got a pizza eating dragon coming out.
Oh,
And it's like, why didn't I do that when I was thinking about it to write about and where that story is going to go? That's why you interested me about your characters and them speaking to you of what the story is about. I love writing stories. It just feeds my inner soul and makes me happy about
yes.
what else can I bring out that kids are going to be interested in. So,
Yeah, that's what we did for the Habit of Grace book because that artist is a master painter. So he actually painted a canvas of every scene. And
oh,
then he
wow.
took a high resolution image for me. And then we put that in the book. So that's how we did it.
How did he do the high resolution? Was it by camera or
Camera.
was it camera? Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you come up with. It's neat to hear about these things early and just be like, just
I
to get
know.
excited about seeing them eventually come to life.
Yes, that's what I love about doing this podcast. My husband asked me yesterday, what made you decide to do that? And I think it's the one on one, Lindsay. We
Yeah.
are in social media all the time, and you just don't get the same building those relationships and getting the feedback from one another. And sometimes social media exhausts me. And mentally, not only that, you read into things and people don't mean that at all. And
Right.
so it's really a challenge for me. Social media, sometimes I get tired, not sleepy tired, but exhausted tired of putting out all of that, energy and content. And sometimes you don't feel like you get it in return, like the one on one conversations and getting that encouragement or just, sharing
Right.
ideas.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Definitely. You also have 3 adult books that you've shared more quietly. Share those titles and what's the difference in how you approach writing for adults versus children. So share maybe why you wrote those or the time that you wrote that. I know the one about the mother and the baby in the womb. I saw that yesterday and I'd love to hear more about that.
Absolutely. So my first book was called Found in Faith, and that was actually a book that came out of that spiritual writing practice that I mentioned earlier that I was doing as part of my mental health journey. And kind of like what I was telling you with when I was writing these things back to myself, I was very positively surprised at what I was coming up with. And I thought to myself, I just felt inspired that this is really helping me. Maybe I can help somebody else. And at the time, my best friend had actually started her own nonprofit organization, and it was called Found in Faith Ministries. So that's why I called the book Found in Faith. And I put it out as a fundraiser book for her organization. Anybody that purchased the book, the proceeds go right back to the nonprofit. So
Uh,
and I also included her story. So it basically came together. What I tell people is it's a little similar to Chicken Soup for the Soul. It's got short stories, poems, and it also has her story in there about why she started her nonprofit. And so that it just sort of all came together and I was able to put it out as this kind of fundraiser book, which was very rewarding. So it really was a win-win for me because I got to support her and her nonprofit. And I also sort of got to dip my toes into the author world. So for me, it was a little less intimidating to bring the book out as though it was for her instead of for me. So that kind of helped me sort of get that, out.
I love Chicken Soup for the Soul. Years ago, I read them and it feeds your soul.
But this one actually started back when we were all on Twitter. And there was a very active writers community that I was a part of on Twitter. And one of my favorite prompts was conversation. And so I found myself writing these conversations between myself and my baby who was in my belly. And it was just they were very funny conversations. And people were reacting really well to these. They were like, oh my gosh, this is great. And, just laughing and enjoying them with me. And I thought, I found myself realizing that when you're pregnant, there's so many things that you can stress out about. And there's so many things that you can just worry about. Like, is everything okay? Am I going to be okay? And I found myself thinking, you know what? I really want to put these conversations together into a book. And I want to make this available for pregnant women because I want to give them an excuse to just laugh and to just, not worry when you're reading the book, just laugh. And my absolute favorite thing about this book is the fact that my daughter absolutely loves it. And she has several conversations memorized with me. So her and I still to this day, so she's 5.5, we will go back and forth and we'll do the conversations that are in the book. So I never
Oh,
saw that coming, but
no, I
that's
love
been
that.
the best. Yeah.
Well, it must be very special to her knowing those conversations was with her in the womb.
I have a picture of her as a baby when she was born in the back, just, showing people, hey, this is here she is.
I
Um,
love that.
so, that's really cool. And then my third one that I have for adults is the Over the Hill Alphabet.
I was reading that yesterday. It's so
Similar
true.
to Wisdom from the Womb, is just meant to make you laugh. It is just a
Yeah.
silly, short book. I meant it for people that are looking for a fun thing to throw in if you have a friend, reaching a milestone birthday or something like that. Just something to, again, just make you laugh. Because I'm thinking, when I wrote that, I just was thinking, gosh, between the pandemic and everything else going on, it's like the world is just so stressed out. And I
Yes.
just want to put something out there that is just silly and fun, and that's all it is. And you can just, read it and laugh and relax for a few minutes, then that's a win for me. That's all I
I
want.
love that. I have to get a couple of books because I think my son-in-law, he's reaching a milestone. My uncle, that's what we talk about. Oh, I got a backache today. My hip
Yeah.
hurts. I'm personally going to physical therapy because I injured my hip. I got up one day from the chair and I couldn't walk. And I was reading that book yesterday and I was thinking, oh, this is hilarious, like a milestone birthday, 50, 60, 70s, 80s. I think it's a great gift to give somebody. One of my recommendations, Lindsay, is I was doing a quick read on Amazon, and I'm on a mission to tell everybody to contact Amazon, tell them that you would like them to show 20, 30, 40% of your pages so people can get a deeper view of just maybe four iterations. The ABCs, I wanted to read more.
Yeah.
Gather your ASIN numbers and send them an email request for them to share. I share 40% of my book because I think that really gives people a good sense of what the book is about. Your books have beautiful illustrations and you want them to see more.
Yeah. Thank you for that tip. That's awesome.
Mother with the womb, I would have loved to see maybe 3 or 4 pages of what that conversation is. Because, they will show maybe the title page, the copyright page, and you might get 1 or sometimes 2 pages, but you can request the percentage of how much of your book you would like them to show.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
We haven't talked about your illustrator. What is her name? Where did you find her, Lindsay? And any details about her? Where is she located?
So my illustrator for the Seaside Stories is Nadja Bullis, and my illustrator for the ABCs of HGG is John Keaton. So Nadja, I was fortunate that I asked my author friends online, and Carissa Bates, who is a wonderful author, she referred me to Nadja. So I just was a wonderful match, and she right away was just working with me and drawing up my characters, and she was extremely patient with me because that's first time author, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So it was so fun to just literally bring these characters to life and figure out what are they going to look like. And there's just so many decisions, as you know, like down to like what color are they going to be. And so it's really just going back and forth. And I'm such a visual person, so I kept having to say to her, "Can you just like show me?" We would talk about it, and I'm just like, I can't until I actually see it. I can't. I'm not gonna get it. So she was very patient with me and wonderful to work with. And so we did all three books separately. And then we also have the Seaside Stories that we did together. So that kind of just brought them all together with a nice little pretty bow and wrapped it up. And so she is actually physically in Oklahoma. So her and I have never met in person.
United
Yeah, but
States.
that's the beauty of technology. We were able to do everything just online back and forth. We used Canva, and she would give me files to look at, and I would be able to give, any feedback that I had suggestion wise, and just go back and forth until it was finalized.
I love that she was in the United States. Not that it makes any difference, but I feel like the time difference is a real challenge, because if they're in another country, you're dealing with 8 to 12 hours of difference, and it's such a long process. Usually it's a 2 day for just communication on one subject. What changes? Did she paint those? Did she use Procreate? What was her medium?
Yes, so she paints. I believe she does watercolors from what I've seen with her. She actually did some in-process videos for me to share, and then I also was able to share them on social media. So it's really fascinating to see the
I
process.
know.
And I
Mhm.
actually have John, who did my Habit Grace book. He is also a painter. So he actually did. So Nadja was working on, it looked like paper that she was working on, and John was working on canvases. So he actually has canvases for every page of the book. And I own two of his canvases now in my house,
Oh,
which is really fun to have that artwork, from your book also displayed,
oh,
in that sort of medium. So yeah, it's really neat.
absolutely. That is so special. And you own the copyright to all of those books and the
Yes,
illustrations?
so I have all the books. I'm able to use any of the illustrations and anything that, marketing wise, I can just use those particular images. Yeah.
And you don't have to tell me the cost, but was the Seaside Books, is the illustrator Nadja, do you feel she was reasonable? Because illustrations are the most expensive.
Yes, she's extremely reasonable. And she even once we because in the Seaside Stories we're using the same characters, and also scenery wise, we stay at the beach. We don't really move, like we don't go from the beach to the mountains, or
Huh?
there's not a huge shift. We show different perspectives on the beach just to make it more interesting. But because of that, once we had developed Sheldon, she actually gave me a even more amazing price for Stella, because we had already developed the characters and we had already developed the scenery. And she also gave me a fantastic price on Sully. I think for the same reason, because it was just those initial things like character development were already done. I had received a grant from the state of Maryland for my Habit of Grace book.
Oh,
And so I was very limited on what I could pay. And I just got extremely lucky that he agreed to that, because talent wise, I mean, we're talking like lifetime master artist level of talent. So fortunately, he's just a huge community advocate and loved the idea, wanted to be involved. So I struck gold with both of them.
part of the challenge that we as authors to find the right illustrator, find affordable illustrator, and then bring it all together, because I don't know if your illustrators also did the formatting for you. Do they do formatting for you?
So Naja did. And then
Good.
John, with the Habit of Greats book, I actually attempted to do most of it on my own, but I did have to reach out for some help because my skill set is limited.
I
So yeah, I did have to get some help on that one. But with Naja, she was able to do it for me, which
I love those books. I think they're so beautiful. All of your books are works of art,
thank
and
you so much.
it is so special. I feel like you're very blessed with that.
Yes.
As both an author, as both an author and a workshop leader in the writing to heal space, how do you balance writing for yourself with writing to help others? And how do you approach marketing when your work is so deeply personal? Marketing keeps coming up on every conversation I have. So I'd love to hear how all of that comes together for you.
Absolutely. So for me, I have found a wonderful resource to make sure that I am writing just for fun, and that is the narrative method. So the narrative method is a free online writing group, and they have multiple events every week. So I'm very happy to give them a little shout out here because I've
Yes.
been attending. I usually go to Thursday night. It works best for my schedule. And they give you a photo and a prompt, and you just get to write, and that's it. It doesn't have to be any more than that.
I am so interested in that, and I would like to put it in the description for anybody that would like to learn more about that. I'm
Yeah.
interested personally in that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful positive experience and it's been amazing. I've been trying to do it pretty regularly for a few months now. And
Uh-huh.
I really look forward to it. It's just something that has been great for me to do. So I do that really for me. And so far, it hasn't turned into anything beyond, the fun hour during the week to just write for fun. And it's kind of like I'm just all over the place. And that's okay. Like sometimes it's nice to
Yeah.
just write for fun and not have those expectations. And then when I'm intentionally writing for other people, typically I will go for somebody that I'm drawn to. So if I see, something on social media or if I just hear of somebody from my personal life and I sort of just feel this natural yearning to write something for them, then that's what I follow.
Love that. I love that you can tap into people and see that they need you to write something for them to make them feel better. That's a lot of empathy that you have for the yearning to help heal somebody else. I can tell that's a deep passion that you have.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
And I think empathy is something that is really lacking in today's world. I just feel like a lot of people don't even know what the word means. Everybody listening should look up the word empathy and see how can they intertwine that into their lives because it is so missing today.
Right. I couldn't agree more with that. Absolutely.
Lindsay, I could talk to you for hours. I just love the whole concept of your background, where you came from. I think because I connect to it so closely, I think we've walked similar paths in the past. Share with everybody anything that we haven't talked about, your books, where to find them, your websites, and your handles on social media.
Thank you so much. I would say that, my other children's book, it doesn't really, it's kind of outside of these three. It's my ABCs of HGG, Fun and Facts and Habit of Grace, Maryland. So that's a book that I really wrote as a thank you to my beautiful city where I'm very lucky to live
Oh,
because I was really writing and healing while I was here. So that's a nonfiction book. It includes real people, real events about our beautiful area. So anybody that's interested in visiting, feel free to check that out. And I'd say I love being probably the most active on Instagram. I'm under Lindsay C. Pope. I also do update my Facebook page, which is Lindsay Pope Writes. And also just on Amazon, if you look on my author page, you can see all my books in one centralized location. So that's kind of the easiest way to find them. But I'm always really happy to personalize books as well. So if anybody reaches out to me personally, sends me a message or an email, I'd be more than happy to personalize signature and send it out because it always feels extra special to do that.
yes, it is extra special. Once again, Lindsay, thank you so much. We'll have to have you back again with more books as they come out. I would love to talk to you more on that level.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today on Beyond the Book with JoAnn Dickinson. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new interview. If you'd like to learn more about today's guest or grab a copy of their book, check the links in the description below. Interested in learning more about me and my children's books, visit JoAnnMDickinsonAuthor.com for signed copies or explore the full collection on Amazon. Links are also in the description. And if you're an aspiring author or a fan of children's books and storytelling, I'd love for you to follow along. I share new episodes, tips, and behind the scenes insight every week. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep writing, and come back to visit us on Beyond the Book.